The $45 apple pie was pushed to the back of the fridge, ignored. I know because I spent an hour in Chicago traffic driving to my mother's favorite bakery just to see her smile. I washed the salad bowls in silence while my brother David bragged about imaginary real estate deals, eating cheap store-bought cookies my parents treated like a feast. I kept quiet. I always kept quiet. I was the boring daughter who secretly paid their electric bills so they wouldn't freeze, hoping my stability would earn their love. But when the Thanksgiving dishes were cleared, the truth spilled out. They had mortgaged their entire future to cover David's massive hidden failures, and now expected me to empty my life savings to clean up his mess. When I said no, my mother looked me dead in the eye and called me a burden. She said it like I meant nothing. My father stayed silent. David just laughed. I didn't scream or cry. I wiped my mouth, put down my silver fork, and walked out into the freezing November rain. What my family didn't realize as I drove away was that an auditor doesn't operate on feelings. I operate on facts. And the financial collapse they set in motion that night was about to hand me the keys to their entire kingdom. I'm Sarah, 28, an auditor from Chicago. This is the story of how my family chose their golden child over me, only to watch me buy their foreclosed home out from under them. If standing up for yourself hits close to home, drop a comment and subscribe. If you walk into my parents' house at 442 Oakwood Avenue, the first thing you see is a large photograph in a golden frame. It hangs right in the middle of the living room wall. In the picture, my mother Linda is wearing a beautiful silk dress. My father Robert looks proud in his dark suit. My older brother David is standing right in the middle, flashing a bright, confident smile. And then there is me, Sarah. I am standing slightly to the side. My smile looks forced. My hands are hiding behind my back. To the rest of the world, we were the perfect family. My mother was a retired high school teacher who volunteered at the local church. My father was a retired bank manager. They were respected. They were polite. But behind the closed doors of that house, the peace was entirely fake. It was a play, and we all had our scripts. My brother David was the golden child. He was 31 years old and called himself an independent investment specialist. He drove a shiny black 2024 BMW. He wore watches that cost more than my car. Whenever he walked into a room, my mother's face would light up like the sun. Every small thing he did was treated like a miracle. I was the scapegoat. I was 28, working as a junior financial auditor at a mid-sized accounting firm in downtown Chicago. I made exactly $65,000 a year. I lived in a small, quiet apartment. I wore plain, neat clothes. I saved $1,000 every single month because I liked the safety of numbers. Numbers never lied. Numbers never made you feel small. But to my family, my stable life was boring. To them, I was just a disappointment who never dreamed big enough. I remember a Sunday dinner very clearly. It was October 12, 2025. I had spent an hour driving to a famous bakery across town to buy my mother's favorite apple pie. It cost me $45. I brought it to the house in a nice white box, hoping to see a smile on her face. When I walked into the kitchen, the smell of roast beef filled the air. My mother took the box from my hands, looked inside, and gave a small sigh. "Oh, Sarah," she said softly, her voice dripping with pity. "Apple pie? You know David is on a strict low-carb diet right now. You really need to be more thoughtful." She pushed the $45 pie to the back of the fridge. A few minutes later, David walked in through the front door. He didn't bring anything except a half-empty box of cheap, store-bought chocolate chip cookies. "Mom, Dad, the king is here," David shouted loudly. My mother rushed to hug him. "David, oh, you brought cookies. How sweet of you. You always remember my sweet tooth." I stood by the sink, washing the salad bowls. The cold water ran over my hands, but my chest burned. I did not say a word. I just swallowed the heavy lump in my throat. At the dinner table, the rules of our family were clear. David talked, my parents listened with wide eyes, and I stayed quiet. "I am closing a massive real estate deal next week," David said, leaning back in his chair. "We are talking a $200,000 commission. The market is slow, but people trust me." "That is my boy," my father said, putting down his spoon. "You know how the real world works. You take risks. You make things happen." My mother smiled proudly, then looked at me. Her smile dropped just a little bit. "Sarah, you should ask your brother for career advice. You have been at that same accounting firm for 3 years. It breaks my heart to see you stuck at a desk, struggling, while David is out there conquering the world." I looked down at my plate. I was not struggling. I paid my own rent. I had 0 debt. But I did not argue. "I am doing fine, Mom," I said quietly. She is just a number cruncher, Mom. David laughed, pointing his fork at me. She likes hiding in the shadows. Not everyone is built for success. My father went back to eating. He never stopped them. His silence was his way of agreeing. Why did I take this? Why didn't I just yell and walk out? Because in real life, toxic families do not look like movie villains. My mother truly believed she was a good, loving parent. Whenever she criticized me, she would say, "I am only saying this because I love you." A mother just wants the best for her child. And I felt guilty. When I was 10 years old, I had a very bad fever. I was in the hospital for a week. My mother stayed awake for 3 nights straight, sitting in a hard plastic chair next to my bed. She reminded me of this story every few months. "I gave up my health and my youth for you, Sarah," she would say. Because of that debt in my heart, I bought the peace, literally. I paid their home electricity and gas bills online every month. Last month, on October 5th, I paid their $145.20 utility bill. I did it secretly so David wouldn't know. I just wanted them to love me. I thought if I was helpful enough, quiet enough, and good enough, they would eventually see my worth. But as October turned into November, I started noticing tiny, strange details. The mask of our perfect family was cracking. My father looked stressed. He stopped reading his newspaper and spent a lot of time staring out the window. My mother started talking about David's wealth too loudly, almost like she was trying to convince herself it was real. And David? His eyes were always darting around. He was always checking his phone, jumping at every loud noise. Being an auditor, I noticed patterns. I noticed that David started asking my parents for small, short-term loans to cover his business expenses. On November 10th, 2025, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Sarah," she said, her voice tight and anxious. "Thanksgiving is at our house this year. I need you to come early and cook the turkey. David is bringing 2 very important business partners to dinner." "Okay, Mom," I said. "I can come. And Sarah," she added, her tone turning sharp. "Please wear something nice. Don't look so tired. We need to look like a strong, successful family. Do not embarrass us." She hung up. I looked at my phone screen. I had no idea that this Thanksgiving dinner would be the night the fake piece would shatter into 1,000,000 pieces. Thanksgiving Day. November 27th, 2025. I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 9 a.m. The sky outside was gray, and the air was freezing. Inside the house, it was warm, but the silence felt very heavy. I walked straight to the kitchen, tied an old blue apron around my waist, and started working. For 7 straight hours, I cooked. I roasted a 20-pound turkey. I mashed potatoes until my arms hurt. I baked green bean casserole and set the large dining table with my mother's expensive silver plates. My mother did not help. She sat in the living room, watching television and drinking tea, only coming into the kitchen to complain that the house smelled too much like onions. At 4:30 p.m., the front door opened. It was David. He was alone. There were no important business partners with him. He looked messy. His expensive tie was loose, and he had dark circles under his eyes. He did not shout his usual loud greetings. He just walked straight to the kitchen, poured a large glass of water, and drank it fast. His hands were shaking. "Where are your guests, David?" my mother asked, rushing into the room. She sounded worried. "They had to cancel. Flight issues," David mumbled, not looking at her. Being an auditor, I knew a lie when I saw one. His eyes darted to the floor. His foot kept tapping against the wooden boards. But my mother just nodded, completely believing him. We sat down for dinner at 6 p.m. The dining room was quiet. The only sound was the clinking of our metal forks against the fancy plates. The tension in the air was so thick it was hard to breathe. I ate my dry turkey and waited. I knew something was wrong. Numbers in a broken system always show signs before they crash. People do too. My father cleared his throat. He put his napkin on the table and looked right at me. "Sarah," he said. His voice was very serious. "We need to talk about family responsibilities." I stopped chewing. I put my hands in my lap. "Okay, Dad. What is it?" My mother leaned forward. She put on her sweetest, softest smile. The same smile she used when she wanted me to feel guilty. "Sweetheart, you know your brother is working on a massive project. But the real estate market is just a little slow right now. Temporary cash flow issues. We are a family, and families help each other." I felt a cold drop in my stomach. "What do you mean?" My father sighed like I was a child who did not understand simple math. 3 months ago, we took out a second mortgage on this house, a home equity line of credit. It was $150,000. We had already been secretly missing our main mortgage payments since the summer just to keep David's earlier debts afloat. But this new loan was supposed to fix everything. We gave it to David to finish his commercial building deal. It was a safe investment, but the deal is delayed. My brain started working instantly. $150,000 loan. Interest rates were around 8%. That meant the new monthly payment was over $1,200, plus their original mortgage, plus taxes. My father's retirement pension could not cover that. The bank sent a warning letter, my father continued, his voice getting a little angry. The payments are 2 months late. We need $3,000 by Monday, and then $1,500 every month after that, until David's deal closes. Okay, I said slowly. And what does this have to do with me? David rolled his eyes. He finally spoke, his voice full of annoyance. Don't play dumb, Sarah. You have no real expenses. You sit in your cheap apartment. You have no husband, no kids, and you just hide your money in a bank. You need to take over the monthly payments. I stared at him. I could not believe what I was hearing. They secretly risked their home, gave $150,000 to David, and now they wanted my hard-earned savings to fix his failure. No, I said. It was just one word, short and sharp. The dining room went completely silent. The old clock on the wall kept ticking. Tick, tick, tick. My mother's sweet smile vanished. Her face turned hard and cold. What did you say? I said no, Mom, I replied, keeping my voice very steady. I am an auditor. I know how debt works. If David's deal was real, he could get a bank loan. You took out a second mortgage without telling me, and now you want me to pay for it. I will not pay his debt. David slammed his hand on the table. The water glasses shook. I am trying to build an empire for this family. You just punch numbers into a computer. You are so selfish. I looked at my mother, hoping she would stop him, hoping she would see that I was just trying to be logical. I wanted her to protect me, just once. Instead, my mother leaned across the table. Her eyes were full of pure anger. She looked at me like I was a piece of dirt on her clean floor. She snapped. You're just a burden, she said, her words slicing through the air like a knife. Always have been. The words hit me right in the chest. I felt like I could not breathe. All the years of trying to be good, paying their bills secretly, buying expensive pies, visiting them, it meant absolutely nothing. To her, I was not a daughter. I was just an emergency bank account. And because I said no, I was a burden. David leaned back in his chair and laughed. It was a cruel, nasty laugh. At least I make this family proud, he smiled. My father said nothing. He just picked up his fork and started eating his mashed potatoes again, the enabler. His silence was his approval. I did not cry. I did not scream. The pain was too deep for tears. The little girl inside me, the one who wanted her mother's love, finally died in that chair. My mind became completely clear. The illusion of my family was gone. I slowly picked up my white cloth napkin and wiped my mouth. I put down my silver fork beside my plate. It made a soft clink sound. I stood up. I did not look at my mother. I did not look at my father. I did not look at David. I walked out of the dining room. I walked down the hallway, opened the heavy front door, and stepped out into the freezing November night. I walked to my small car, got inside, and locked the doors. I drove away without a single word. I did not know it then, but I would not speak to them again for a very long time. The drive back to my apartment was a blur of yellow streetlights and freezing November rain. I parked my car in the small, dark lot outside my building. I turned off the engine, but I did not get out. I just sat there. My hands gripped the cold steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The words kept playing in my head, over and over, like a broken record. You're just a burden, always have been. I finally walked up the stairs to my apartment. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and did not even turn on the lights. I dropped my keys on the floor, slid down the wall in the dark hallway, and pulled my knees to my chest. For the first time in my life, I cried. It was not a quiet, pretty cry. It was an ugly, heavy sob that made my ribs ache. I cried for the mother I wished I had. I cried for the years I spent trying to buy their love with $45 pies and secret bill payments. But when the morning sun finally came through my window on Friday, November 28th, the tears stopped. The little girl inside me was gone. I stood up, washed my face, and made a strong cup of black coffee. I sat at my small kitchen table and opened my laptop. I logged into my bank account. I clicked on the auto pay settings. I found the entries for my parents' gas and electric bills. Delete. Delete. Just like that, the financial cord was cut. I closed the laptop. The silence in my apartment did not feel heavy anymore. It felt safe. Over the next 2 weeks, my phone stayed perfectly quiet. My parents did not call to check on me. David did not call to apologize. To them, my silence was just a tantrum. They expected me to come crawling back, begging for their forgiveness. But on Tuesday, December 16th, 2025, at 7:30 p.m., my phone buzzed. The screen showed a picture of Aunt Martha. She was my father's older sister. She lived just 3 streets away from my parents. Aunt Martha was the ultimate enabler. In every toxic family, there is an Aunt Martha. She is the person who knows exactly how bad things are, but demands that everyone keep smiling to protect the family's public image. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello, Aunt Martha." "Sarah, finally," she said. Her voice was sharp and annoyed. "I have been trying to reach you. Are you hiding?" "I am just working, Aunt Martha. Busy time at the firm." "Too busy to apologize to your mother?" she snapped. "Linda called me yesterday. She was crying. She said you ruined Thanksgiving dinner and stormed out for absolutely no reason. She is heartbroken." I let out a dry, tired laugh. "No reason? Did she tell you why I left?" "She said you were jealous of your brother again." Aunt Martha sighed, sounding exactly like my mother. "Did she tell you they secretly took out a $150,000 second mortgage?" I asked, keeping my voice very flat. "And that they demanded I use my savings to pay for it?" Aunt Martha went completely quiet. The silence lasted for 5 long seconds. In the auditing world, silence is an answer. It means you hit the truth. "Sarah," she started, her voice suddenly dropping to a whisper. "Family is family. You have to understand how things work. David has a public image to keep up. Your parents are just trying to help him fix a little mistake." "A $150,000 mistake is not little, Aunt Martha," I said. "And if his real estate deal was real, the bank would have given him a business loan. It does not matter what the money was for." Aunt Martha suddenly raised her voice, losing her calm act. "He got in over his head. He borrowed money from some very bad people in Nevada, okay? If he didn't pay them back by the end of November, they were going to come here. They were going to ruin him, Sarah, ruin our family name. Do you want your own brother to go to jail? Do you want your parents to be humiliated in front of the whole church?" My blood ran cold. Nevada? Bad people? My brain started connecting the dots instantly. "He didn't lose the money in real estate," I whispered. "He lost it gambling. Or paying off loan sharks." "I did not say that." Aunt Martha panicked. "Look, the point is you are single, you make good money, you have no real responsibilities. It is your duty to step up. Stop being so stubborn and call your mother. Give them the money, Sarah. Keep this family together." "I am not a human shield," I said softly, but firmly. "If David broke the law, that is his problem. If Mom and Dad bet their house on a liar, that is their problem. Do not ever call me about this again." I pressed the red button and ended the call. My heart was beating fast. The secret was out. My parents did not give David $150,000 to build a commercial property. They gave it to him to save him from dangerous people. They risked the roof over their own heads to cover up the crimes of their golden child. And when the bill came due, they tried to throw me under the bus to pay for it. Grief is a funny thing. Once you realize the people who hurt you knew exactly what they were doing, the sadness turns into sharp, cold focus. I opened my laptop again. I was not just a rejected daughter anymore. I was an auditor. And auditors do not operate on feelings. They operate on facts. I went to the public records website for Cook County. I typed in David's full name. I searched through civil court filings from the past year. It took me 3 hours, but at 11:15 p.m., I found it. It was a civil lawsuit filed in September 2025 by a private lending group based in Las Vegas, Nevada. The defendant was David. The amount he owed them was exactly $152,400. The case was quietly dismissed in early November, right around the time my parents took out the new mortgage on their house. I stared at the glowing screen. The math was perfect. They sold their future to buy his freedom. And in a few months, when David failed to pay my parents back, the bank was going to take their house. I closed the laptop. The room was dark, but my path was completely clear. I was going to watch closely, and I was going to be ready when the crash finally happened. The hardest part about walking away from your family is not the big arguments. It is the quiet days. It is the firsts. December 25, 2025, was my first Christmas alone. I stayed in my small apartment. I did not buy a tree. I sat on my sofa wrapped in a blanket, eating a $12 frozen pizza. I kept looking at my phone, waiting for it to ring. A small, stupid part of my brain hoped my mother would call and say, "Sarah, I am sorry. Please come home." The phone never rang. Then came February 9th, 2026, my mother's birthday. Every year of my life, I had bought her a card and a gift. This year, I bought nothing. I walked past the flower shop near my office, stopped for 5 seconds, and forced my feet to keep walking. It felt like I was holding my breath underwater. It hurt, but I survived. The little girl inside me was learning how to breathe on her own. I threw all my pain into my work. As an auditor at Grant & Collins Financial, I was very good at finding hidden numbers. Since I did not have weekend family dinners anymore, I worked overtime. My $65,000 salary bumped up to $72,000 after my performance review in late January. I was rebuilding my life, $1 and one quiet day at a time. But I was also watching. I could not let the secret go. I needed to know exactly when the crash was coming. On Wednesday, March 4th, 2026, at 1:15 p.m., I was sitting in the office break room. I was eating a cheap turkey sandwich and looking at the Cook County public property records on my laptop. I was trying to track my parents' second mortgage, but the free public website was very slow and missing details. "You are looking in the wrong place," a deep voice said. I jumped and quickly closed my laptop. I looked up. It was Marcus. Marcus Vance was a senior forensic accountant at my firm. He was 45 years old, wore cheap reading glasses, and always had a coffee stain on his tie. He was not a superhero. He was just a very tired, very smart man who spent his life hunting down corporate thieves. We had worked on one project together in January, and he liked how I organized spreadsheets. "I was just checking something personal," I stammered, feeling my face get hot. Marcus sat down in the chair across from me. He put his coffee cup on the table and looked right at me. "I saw the screen, Sarah. You are looking at residential property liens, but you are using the free county portal. It is always 3 months behind." I looked down at my hands. I did not want to explain my messy family drama to a senior coworker. "It is just my parents' house," I said quietly. "I am trying to see if they are making their loan payments." Marcus did not push. He did not ask me why I was spying on my parents. He just nodded slowly. He understood that numbers usually tell a sad story. "You know, Sarah," Marcus said, his voice very calm, "blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family. My brother stole $40,000 from me 10 years ago to buy a boat. My mother blamed me for making him feel bad about being broke." I looked up at him in shock. He gave a small, sad smile. "I know the look," he said, pointing at my tired eyes. "The scapegoat look. You are carrying a weight that does not belong to you." Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. He wrote down a username and a password. He slid the paper across the table to me. "This is the login for the firm's premium LexisNexis account," he said quietly. "It shows real-time banking and property records. Do not do it on company time. Use it at home. Find what you need to find. And if you need help understanding the legal traps, my door is open." He stood up and walked away before I could even say thank you. In that moment, Marcus became the first piece of my chosen family. He did not judge me. He just gave me the tools to protect myself. That night, at 8 p.m., I sat at my kitchen table. My heart was beating fast. I logged into the premium database using Marcus's code. I typed in my parents' address, 442 Oakwood Avenue. The screen loaded in 2 seconds. The reality was much worse than I thought. My parents had taken out the $150,000 second mortgage in October to pay off David's loan sharks. But the database showed something new. A bright red flag, final judgment of foreclosure, filed February 28, 2026. I stopped breathing. They had been skipping their first mortgage payments for almost a year to pay for David's mistakes. The slow legal foreclosure process had actually started last summer, and now the clock had finally run out. The second bank was forcing the auction to get whatever cash they could. But then I saw the worst part. Right under the property details, there was a new legal document attached to the house. It was dated January 15, 2026. It was a quitclaim deed. I clicked on it and read the fine print. My stomach turned upside down. My parents had quietly transferred 50% ownership of their house to David. Why? Because David used that 50% ownership to secure another personal business loan for $50,000 from a shady online lender. But regular banks do not lend on half a house. I zoomed in on the loan document. The signatures at the bottom for the other 50% owners, my parents, were completely forged. David had committed federal loan fraud to get the cash. My mother and father were completely trapped. David had drained the first $150,000 to save his own skin, and then he legally attached himself to their house to squeeze out another $50,000. He was bleeding them dry, and they were letting him do it. The house was going to be auctioned by the bank in exactly 90 days, June 2026. I closed the laptop. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness. I felt a cold, sharp anger. David was not just a golden child anymore. He was a parasite, and my parents chose to feed him instead of listening to the daughter who actually tried to love them. The timeline was set. I had 3 months to prepare. I was going to let them crash, and when the dust settled, I would be ready. April 14th, 2026. Spring had arrived in Chicago, but I still felt cold inside. The 90-day clock on my parents' house was ticking down. Every single day, I went to work, did my audits, and went home to my quiet apartment. I had not spoken to my mother, my father, or David in exactly 4.5 months. That Tuesday evening, at 6:15 p.m., the office was mostly empty. The cleaning staff was vacuuming the hallway outside. I sat at my desk staring at the printed copies of my parents' property records. The papers felt heavy in my hands. Marcus walked past my desk. He paused, looking at the papers, and then looked at my face. "You look like you are trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces," he said, taking a sip from his worn-out coffee mug. "The pieces are all here," I said softly. "I just hate the picture they make." Marcus pulled up a rolling chair and sat next to me. I slid the papers toward him. I trusted him. He was the only person who did not look at me like I was a bad daughter. He put on his cheap reading glasses and read the notice of default, and then the quitclaim deed. His eyes scanned the numbers very fast. When he finished, he took off his glasses and let out a long breath. "Your brother," Marcus said, keeping his voice low, "is a very dangerous kind of stupid." "I know," I replied. "Let me explain what is going to happen, Sarah," Marcus said, pointing at the documents with his pen. "In the real world, it is the second bank, the one that gave the $150,000, that is forcing this auction because they are desperate. Your parents owe the first bank $160,000 because they stopped paying both. The house is going to a public auction." "What about the first bank's loan? And the $50,000 loan David took against his half of the house?" I asked, wanting to be completely sure. "The first bank's loan stays attached to the house. Anyone who buys it at the auction has to take over that $160,000 debt. And David's $50,000 loan, along with his forged signatures, creates a massive toxic legal cloud on the title," Marcus said bluntly. "Normal investors will run away from a mess like this. They will not bid on it. The secondary lenders will try to sue your parents and David for the missing money later, but the house itself will be gone. They will lose everything." I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry. "The house is worth at least $400,000. It is a beautiful house." "Yes," Marcus nodded. "But because I know how to legally clear that title fraud, you can buy the second bank's position for pennies." I looked down my hands. A small, weak voice in my head, the voice of the scared little girl, whispered that I should call them. I should warn them. Maybe if I showed them the papers, my mother would finally wake up and realize David was destroying them. "I should tell them," I whispered. "I should warn Dad." Marcus leaned forward. His face was very serious. There was no pity in his eyes, just hard truth. "If you call them right now, what will happen?" he asked. I thought about it. I pictured my mother's face. I pictured David's loud voice. "My mother will cry," I said slowly. "She will say I am being cruel. David will tell them I am lying or trying to trick them. And then, David will convince them to ask me for money to stop the auction." "Exactly," Marcus said. "You cannot save people who love their sickness. Your parents love the lie of David more than they love the truth of you. If you warn them, you will just become the villain again. Or worse, you will become the bank." He was right. Hyper-realistic family dynamics always follow the same sad rules. Toxic parents do not suddenly wake up and apologize just because you show them logic. They manipulate you to fix the mess. "So, I just watch it burn?" I asked, feeling a strange mix of guilt and freedom. Marcus sat back in his chair. "No, you prepare. You told me you have been saving $1,000 a month for years, right?" "Yes, I have $32,000 in my savings account. I live very cheaply," I said. "Okay," Marcus said, tapping his pen on the desk. "County auctions for secondary liens require a 10% cash deposit on the starting bid. The rest must be paid within 24 hours. You cannot get a normal mortgage for an auction. But I know a local hard money lender. His name is Mr. Vance. He is my older cousin. He lends money to investors to buy auction properties, based purely on the value of the house, not the borrower. If you bring him a solid audit of the property and your clean financial history, he will back you." My heart stopped. I stared at Marcus. You want me to buy my parents' house? I want you to make a smart investment, Marcus corrected me gently. A $400,000 house is going to be sold for maybe $170,000. If a stranger buys it, your parents are out on the street. If you buy it, you own a massive asset. What you do with it after that is your choice. The idea was crazy, but it was also perfectly logical. For the next 6 weeks I did not cry. I worked. My chosen family team helped me build my armor. Marcus introduced me to his cousin, the private lender. I brought a perfect organized binder of my financial history, my credit score of 810 and the property details. The lender looked at the numbers, looked at my steady job history, and agreed to give me a short-term bridge loan for the auction, which I could refinance into a normal mortgage later. I was officially ready. By the second week of May 2026, the trap finally closed on my family. I knew it happened because my phone started ringing. On Thursday, May 14th at 9 a.m., my mother called. I didn't answer. At 10:30 a.m., Aunt Martha called. I didn't answer. At 1 p.m., my father left a voicemail. I listened to it in the bathroom at work. His voice was shaking. "Sarah, it's Dad," he said, sounding like a very old, very tired man. "Please call me back. Some men came to the house today. They put a notice on the front door. The bank is taking the house on June 25th. David is not answering his phone. We don't know what to do. Please, Sarah." I deleted the voicemail. The fake peace was finally over. The crash was here. And in just a few weeks, the ultimate family gathering was coming, and all the masks were going to fall off. For the rest of May 2026, my phone screen looked like a battlefield. Missed call, Mom. Missed call, Dad. Missed call, Aunt Martha. Text from Mom, "Sarah, please. Your father's blood pressure is very high. We need you." I did not reply to any of them. In the real world, when you finally set a boundary with a toxic family, they do not respect it. They panic. They try to break the door down because they are used to you always fixing their messes. On Saturday, May 23rd, 2026, I went to the grocery store. I bought fresh spinach, some chicken, and a carton of milk. It was a normal, quiet afternoon, but when I walked into the lobby of my apartment building holding my paper grocery bags, my heart suddenly stopped. Sitting on the lobby sofa, wearing her expensive winter coat and smelling like heavy floral perfume, was Aunt Martha. When she saw me, she stood up quickly. Her face was tight with anger. "Do you know how hard it is to get past the security door of this cheap building?" she snapped. I held my grocery bags tightly. I did not invite her upstairs. "What are you doing here, Aunt Martha?" "I am here because your mother has not stopped crying for a week," she said, marching right up to me. She pointed a finger at my chest. "The bank is taking their house, Sarah, your childhood home. And you are just ignoring them. What is wrong with you?" I looked at her finger, then looked up at her eyes. I kept my voice perfectly quiet. "Where is David?" Aunt Martha's face froze for a second. She dropped her hand. She looked away, staring at the mailboxes. "David is going through a very hard time. He is staying at a friend's house. He is very depressed about his business failing." I almost laughed. "He is hiding, Aunt Martha. He stole $150,000 from his own parents, used their house to get another $50,000, and now that the bank is here, he ran away." "Ugh, he made a mistake," Aunt Martha shouted, her voice echoing in the empty lobby. "He is a young man trying to build a career. Yes, it was foolish, but he is still your brother, and they are still your parents. You cannot just leave them on the street. This is the power of the enabler." Aunt Martha knew all facts. She knew David had ruined them. She knew it was a selfish, terrible crime. But in her mind, the real crime was me not cleaning it up. To her, family duty meant the victim must suffer to protect the golden child. "What exactly do you want me to do, Aunt Martha?" I asked calmly. "You have a great credit score," she said, her voice turning soft and manipulative. "You make good money. You can go to the bank on Monday, take out a personal loan, pay the late fees and stop the auction. Then you can just pay the monthly mortgage for them. It is the right thing to do, Sarah. God watches how we treat our parents." She used guilt like a weapon. The little girl inside me, the one who just wanted her family to be happy, felt a sharp pinch of pain. It would be so easy to say yes. It would be so easy to take on massive debt just to hear my mother say, "Thank you, Sarah. You are a good daughter." But I was not a little girl anymore. I was a professional auditor. "If I pay the late fees," I said, looking right into Aunt Martha's eyes, "the bank will stop the auction. But the house will still have David's $50,000 loan attached to it, and the $150,000 second mortgage will still be there. I would be throwing my life savings into a black hole of debt that David created. I would ruin my own future to save a house that is already dead. Aunt Martha stared at me like I was a monster. You are just calculating numbers. These are human beings. This is your blood. Yes, I said, my voice finally cracking just a little bit with raw emotion. They are my blood. And on Thanksgiving, my mother looked at her own blood and called me a burden, because I would not pay for David's lies. Aunt Martha opened her mouth to argue, but she had nothing left to say. Facts do not care about manipulation. Do not ever come to my home again, I said softly. I walked past her, got into the elevator, and pressed the button. The doors closed, leaving her standing alone in the lobby. I went to my apartment, put the milk in the fridge, and sat on the floor. My hands were shaking. My chest hurt. Doing the right thing sometimes feels exactly like doing the wrong thing. It hurts deeply. But I survived the test. The enabler did not break me. By early June, my chosen family helped me finish my plans. On Wednesday, June 10, 2026, I sat in the office of Mr. Vance, Marcus's cousin. He was a quiet, serious man who wore gray suits. He reviewed all my documents. He looked at the property appraisal. The house is worth $400,000, Mr. Vance said, tapping his pen. The starting bid at the county auction will be exactly what your parents owe the first bank, $160,000. Because the property has messy secondary liens from your brother, most normal buyers will be too scared to bid. You have a very good chance of winning it at the starting price. And the bridge loan? I asked, my heart beating fast. Approved, Mr. Vance nodded. I will provide the funds for the auction. In 3 months, once the title is clean and in your name, you will refinance it into a standard 30-year mortgage and pay me back. You are making a very smart, very cold move, Sarah. It is not cold, Marcus said from the corner of the room. He gave me a proud smile. It is just math, and math is fair. I signed the final agreement. I was officially registered for the Cook County Public Foreclosure Auction. The auction was set for Thursday, June 25, 2026, at 10 a.m. The timeline was locked. My parents were packing their bags, crying, wondering why their golden child had vanished. They had no idea that their burden of a daughter was quietly standing in the shadows, holding the keys to their future. The ultimate family gathering was coming, and it was going to happen in a courtroom. Thursday, June 25, 2026. The Cook County Courthouse is a massive building made of gray stone and glass. It does not look like a place where dreams come true. It looks like a place where mistakes are punished. The hallways smell like stale coffee, floor wax, and nervous sweat. I walked through the heavy metal doors at exactly 9:30 a.m. My hands were deep inside the pockets of my dark gray suit. In my right pocket, my fingers gripped a thick paper envelope. Inside that envelope was a cashier's check from my bank for $16,000. It was the exact 10% deposit I needed to bid. It was the physical proof of my years of quiet, lonely saving. Marcus walked beside me. He wore his usual wrinkled tie and carried a leather briefcase. He did not say much, but his presence was like a strong, steady wall. My chosen family was right beside me, making sure I did not fall. Room 402, Marcus said quietly, pointing to a wooden door at the end of the hall. The auction room. Are you ready? I took a deep breath. I thought about the $45 apple pie. I thought about the Thanksgiving dinner. I thought about my mother calling me a burden. The scared little girl inside me finally went to sleep, and the auditor woke up. I am ready, I said. We walked inside. Real-life property auctions are not like the movies. There is no drama. There is no loud yelling. It is just a boring room with row after row of wooden benches. At the front, a bored man in a cheap suit sits behind a microphone, reading addresses from a computer screen. Most of the people in the room were professional investors looking at their phones. We sat in the middle row. I held a small white card with the number 84 printed on it. Item number 12, the auctioneer's voice droned over the speakers. It sounded robotic and completely empty of emotion. 442 Oakwood Avenue, first mortgage default. Opening bid is set at exactly $160,000 subject to the senior mortgage. My heart hit my ribs so hard I thought it would break the bone. That address was not just an item number. That was the front yard where I learned to ride a bike. That was the kitchen where my mother ignored me. That was the dining room where my family broke my heart. Do I have a bid for $160,000? The auctioneer asked, looking at the room. The professional investors did not move. Just as Mr. Vance had predicted, the property was too messy. They had seen the public records. They knew about David's $50,000 secondary loan, the forged signatures on the title, and the fact that they would also inherit the First Bank's massive debt. No one wanted a house with that much legal poison attached to it. Going once for $160,000, the man said. Marcus nudged my elbow. I raised my hand. I held up card number 84. My hand was shaking slightly, but I kept it high. The auctioneer looked at me. I have 160,000 from bidder 84. Do I have 165? The room was completely silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioner. I held my breath. I felt like the whole world had paused on this one single number. Going twice, the man said. He picked up a small wooden hammer. Sold to bidder 84. Bang! The sound of the hammer hitting the wood echoed in the room. It did not sound like a victory. It did not feel like a celebration. It felt like a heavy, solid door closing on my past. Come to the clerk's desk, please, the auctioneer said, already looking down at his next file. I stood up. My legs felt like they were made of heavy lead. I walked to the front desk. I pulled the envelope from my pocket and handed over my $16,000 cashier's check. The clerk, a tired woman with glasses, typed on her keyboard for a minute. She printed a single sheet of paper and slid it across the desk toward me. Sign here, ma'am. You have 24 hours to wire the remaining balance from your lender. I picked up the black pen. I signed my name, Sarah Miller. Congratulations, she mumbled without looking up. You are the new legal owner of 442 Oakwood Avenue. The title transfer will be filed by tomorrow morning. I walked back to Marcus. I looked down at the certificate of sale in my hands. The paper was thin, but it held all the power in the world. I owned my parents' house. The home of the golden child now belonged to the scapegoat. When we walked out of the courthouse and stepped into the warm Chicago sunshine, Marcus stopped and looked at me. You did it, he said, smiling a real warm smile. The math worked. Yes, I whispered. But the story is not over yet. They are still inside the house. The bank's eviction notice told them to leave by July 10th. But now, I am the bank. So, what is the auditor's next move? Marcus asked. I looked at the busy street. I needed to do this perfectly. I needed to expose the truth in front of everyone, but David was still hiding like a coward. If I just knocked on the door, my parents would deny everything, and David wouldn't even be there. I needed a trap. A legal, 100% realistic trap. I need to offer them cash for keys, I said, looking back at Marcus. Marcus raised his eyebrows in surprise, then let out a slow laugh. That is brilliant, Sarah. That is absolutely ruthless and brilliant. In real estate, cash for keys is a standard legal strategy. Sometimes, when a bank or a person buys a foreclosed home, the old owners refuse to leave. They break windows, destroy the floors, and hide. To stop this, the new owner offers them cash, usually a few $1,000s, to pack their bags, hand over the keys, and leave peacefully. But here was the catch. To get the cash, every single person whose name was on the old property deed had to sign the legal agreement in person. My parents have absolutely zero money left, I explained, my mind working fast. They are desperate. If I have a lawyer send them an official letter offering $10,000 in cash to leave peacefully, they will take it. But because my parents gave David 50% ownership in January, David's name is on the old deed. He has to be there to sign. Marcus nodded slowly. David is hiding from his debts. But if he hears there is $10,000 of free cash sitting on the dining room table, his greed will force him to come out of hiding. He will show up. Exactly, I said. My voice was no longer shaking, it was completely steady. We scheduled the meeting for Saturday, July 4th, Independence Day. A nice, ironic day for a family gathering. That afternoon, I paid Mr. Vance's real estate lawyer to draft the official cash for keys offer. The letter did not use my name, it just said it was from Oakwood Holdings LLC, the legal business name I had set up. The letter offered exactly $10,000 in cash, handed over on July 4th at 2 p.m., inside the house, but only if Robert, Linda, and David Miller were all present to sign the final release. The trap was officially set. The bait was in the water. Now, all I had to do was wait for the ultimate family gathering. The golden child was about to meet the burden he created. The trap was set, and it did not take long for the fish to bite. On Monday, June 29, 2026, my phone buzzed on my desk at work. It was an email from Mr. Davis, the real estate lawyer representing my fake company, Oakwood Holdings LLC. I opened the email. It was short and to the point. Dear Miss Miller, I sent the cash for keys offer to the residents at 442 Oakwood Avenue. They called my office this morning. They were very eager. Robert Miller verbally accepted the offer. He confirmed that his son David Miller will be present on Saturday, July 4th at 2 p.m. to sign the final release. They asked if the $10,000 could be brought in cash, specifically $100 bills. I told them the company representative will bring the cash to the house. We are fully confirmed. I leaned back in my chair. A slow, cold breath escaped my lips. It worked. David's greed was stronger than his fear. He had been hiding from his debts for over a month, leaving his parents to face the eviction alone. But the moment he heard the words $10,000 in cash, he magically decided to come home. In my mind, I started organizing the facts. I bought a plain black folder. Inside it, I placed all the printed proof I had gathered over the last 8 months. Page 1. The public record of David's $152,400 debt to the Nevada loan sharks. Page 2. The $150,000 second mortgage my parents took out to save him. Page 3. The January quitclaim deed, giving David 50% of the house. Page 4. David's secret $50,000 loan taken against the house. Page 5. The final certificate of sale from the courthouse, showing my name as the sole legal owner of the house. Numbers do not lie. Numbers do not care about who is the golden child. This black folder was not just paper, it was a mirror. On Saturday, I was going to force my family to look into it. On Wednesday, July 1st, I received another piece of the puzzle. It was a voicemail. I was making dinner in my small kitchen when the red notification popped up on my phone. The caller ID said Aunt Martha. I put my phone on the counter, pressed the speaker button, and listened. "Hello, Sarah." Aunt Martha's voice filled my quiet kitchen. She did not sound angry this time. She sounded proud. She sounded like she had won a game. "I am just calling to let you know that you don't need to worry about your parents anymore," she said, her tone dripping with fake sweetness. "God answered our prayers. A big investment company bought the house at the auction, and guess what? They are so nice they are giving your parents $10,000 in cash just to move out by this weekend. A true miracle." I stopped chopping my vegetables and stared at the phone. "David is coming home for the meeting," she continued, her voice getting a little louder, almost bragging. "He is going to use that money to start fresh. See, Sarah? Family sticks together, and good things happen to good people. You turned your back on your own blood, but they are going to be just fine without you. Have a good life." Beep. The voicemail ended. I stood in my kitchen holding a knife, feeling a strange mix of deep sadness and pure disbelief. This is the ultimate truth about toxic families and their enablers. They never learn. They never look at their own mistakes. My parents lost their home because they trusted a liar. Now, they were being kicked out, but they still thought they were the winners because a stranger was handing them a little bit of cash. They thought David was returning to start fresh, when he was really just returning to steal the last crumbs of their ruined life. They did not know that the big investment company was me. They did not know that the miracle was the daughter they called a burden. I did not delete the voicemail. I saved it. It was the final push I needed. The morning of Saturday, July 4th, 2026, was very hot and sticky. The sun was bright, and you could smell barbecue smoke in the air from people celebrating Independence Day. I woke up at 8 a.m. I did not feel nervous. I felt heavy, like a soldier putting on boots for a battle she did not want to fight, but had to finish. I dressed very carefully. I did not wear a fancy dress. I did not wear my nice work suit. I wanted to look exactly like the person they always ignored. I put on a pair of plain blue jeans, a simple white button-down shirt, and flat brown shoes. I tied my hair back into a neat, tight ponytail. At 1 p.m., I picked up the thick black folder from my kitchen table. Beside it was a thick brown bank envelope. Inside the envelope was $10,000 in crisp $100 bills. I had withdrawn it from my savings account the day before. I put both the folder and the envelope into my leather bag. I locked my apartment door and walked to my car. The drive to my parents' house took exactly 45 minutes. Every street corner, every traffic light, brought back a memory. I passed the bakery where I bought the $45 apple pie. I passed the hospital where my mother sat by my bed when I was 10. At 1:55 p.m., I turned onto Oakwood Avenue. The street looked exactly the same. The trees were green and full. But as I pulled up to house number 4042, reality hit me. There were cardboard boxes stacked on the front porch. The beautiful flower pots my mother used to care for were dead and brown, and parked in the driveway, covered in a thin layer of dust but still looking expensive, was David's black BMW. He was inside. They were all inside, waiting for the company representative to arrive, waiting for their free money. I parked my car on the street, right behind David's BMW. I turned off the engine. The car was silent. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel for just 5 seconds. I let myself feel the fear, the grief, and the ghost of the little girl who just wanted to be loved. Then, I took a deep breath, opened my eyes, and grabbed my bag. I stepped out into the hot July air. I walked up the concrete driveway. I climbed the 3 wooden steps to the front porch, stepped around a taped cardboard box, and reached for the doorbell. I pressed it once. Ding dong. The sound echoed inside the house. I heard heavy footsteps walking toward the door. The lock clicked. The doorknob turned. The ultimate family gathering was about to begin. The heavy wooden door slowly opened. My father stood there. He looked 10 years older than he did at Thanksgiving. His hair was messy, and he was wearing an old faded t-shirt. When he saw me standing on the porch, his eyes widened in shock. "Sarah?" he said, his voice confused. He quickly looked at his watch. "What are you doing here? You picked a very bad time. We are waiting for a very important man. A company representative." "I know, Dad," I said quietly. I did not wait for an invitation. I stepped past him and walked into the house. The inside of the house was sad. The walls that used to have beautiful family pictures were empty. There were brown cardboard boxes everywhere. The air smelled like dust and cheap packing tape. The perfect family mask was completely broken. I walked straight into the dining room. It was the exact same room where my mother had called me a burden 7 months ago. The big wooden table was empty, except for a few pens and a notepad. Sitting on the sofa in the living room next door were my mother and Aunt Martha. When my mother saw me, she stood up fast. "Sarah," my mother snapped. She looked angry and embarrassed. "You cannot be here right now. We are busy. We are meeting a buyer. You ignored us for months, and now you show up on moving day. Go home." Aunt Martha crossed her arms. "I told you she would come crawling back when she heard you were getting $10,000, Linda. She just wants a piece of the money." Before I could say a word, a door opened down the hallway. David walked out. He was wearing a designer white shirt, but it was wrinkled. He looked tired, but he still had that same arrogant, cocky walk. When he saw me, he stopped and rolled his eyes. "Oh great. The number cruncher is here," David laughed. He walked into the dining room and leaned against the table. "Look, Sarah, we don't need your little savings account anymore. Real business people handled this. A big investment firm bought the house. They are paying us to leave. You can go back to your boring life now." I did not yell. I did not cry. I just looked at him. I placed my leather bag on the dining table. The room went quiet. I reached inside and pulled out the thick brown bank envelope. I dropped it on the table. It made a heavy thud sound. David's eyes instantly locked onto the envelope. He knew the shape of money. Then, I reached into my bag again and pulled out the plain black folder. I placed it right next to the cash. I looked at my father, then my mother, and finally at David. "There is no man in a suit coming," I said. My voice was very calm and very clear. "Oakwood Holdings LLC is my registered business. I am the company representative. I bought this house at the county auction." The silence in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The old clock on the wall kept ticking. Tick, tick, tick. My father stared at me, his mouth slightly open. You bought the house?" David let out a loud fake laugh. "Yeah, right. A $400,000 house? On your cheap little auditor salary? Nice joke, Sarah. Who is really waiting outside?" I opened the black folder. I took out the first piece of paper. It was the official certificate of sale from the Cook County Courthouse, stamped with the blue government seal. My name, Sarah Miller, was printed clearly at the top as the sole legal owner. I slid the paper across the smooth wood of the table. My father picked it up with shaking hands. He put on his reading glasses. He read the paper once. He read it twice. He slowly lowered the paper, and his face turned completely pale. "Linda," my father whispered, turning to my mother. "It is real. Sarah owns the house." My mother walked slowly into the dining room. She looked at the paper. Then, she looked at me. For a second I thought she might feel bad. I thought she might realize how wrong she had been. But toxic families do not work like that. They do not feel guilt. They feel entitlement. My mother's face suddenly broke into a massive, relieved smile. She rushed forward and tried to grab my hands, but I stepped back. "Oh, Sarah," she cried happily. "You saved us. You really saved us. You bought the house so we don't have to move. Oh, I knew you were a good daughter. We can just unpack the boxes. David, did you hear that? Your sister saved the family home." David smiled too. His fear was gone. He looked at me like I was a useful idiot. "Wow, little sister finally did something useful." David smirked. He reached out and tapped the brown envelope full of cash. "So we stay in the house. Awesome. But since we are family, you can just go ahead and give me this 10 grand anyway. Think of it as an apology for being so stubborn at Thanksgiving." I looked at them. They really believed this. They believed that I went through months of silence, spent my life savings, and came here just to fix their mistakes so they could keep treating me like dirt. They believed the scapegoat was finally doing her job. Aunt Martha smiled from the living room. See, Linda? I told you family always steps up. God is good. I let them smile for exactly 10 seconds. I let them feel the fake peace one last time. Then, I put my hand flat on the brown envelope and pulled it away from David's fingers. You are not unpacking the boxes, I said, my voice cutting through their happy chatter like cold ice. My mother's smile froze. What do you mean, sweetheart? I mean I did not buy this house for you, I said, looking right into her eyes. I bought it for me. It is a financial investment. You missed your mortgage payments. The bank evicted you. I am the new owner, and the eviction stands. You are all leaving today. David slammed his hand on the table. The cocky smile vanished. His face turned red with anger. Are you crazy? You are going to kick your own parents out on the street? You are a monster. No, I replied smoothly. I am offering you cash for keys. That is why I brought the $10,000. If you sign the legal release, you get the cash, and you leave peacefully. If you do not sign it, I will call the county sheriff, and they will throw your boxes on the grass for free. The choice is yours. My father looked like he was going to have a heart attack. Sarah, please, why are you doing this? We are your family. We just made a small mistake with the loan. A small mistake? I asked. I reached into the black folder again. The time for the final truth had come. It was time to pull the mask off the golden child, right in front of the enablers. I pulled out page 1 and page 2. Let's talk about the mistake, Dad, I said, holding up the papers. Let's talk about the $152 and $400 David owed to loan sharks in Nevada. And let's talk about how you took a second mortgage on this house to pay off his gambling debts, and lied to me at Thanksgiving. David took a step back. His face went completely white. The real confrontation had just begun. The word gambling hung in the dusty air of the dining room. Aunt Martha walked slowly in from the living room. Her eyes were wide. She looked at my mother. Linda, what is she talking about? Nevada, loan sharks. You told me David's business partner ran away with the money. My mother's face turned bright red. She looked at the floor, then at the wall. She looked everywhere except at Aunt Martha. The secret was out. The respectable, church-going family had lied to everyone to cover up their son's dark reality. It was just a misunderstanding, my mother stammered, her voice shaking. She quickly looked at me, her eyes full of panic and anger. Sarah, stop it. You do not understand how the world works. David was under a lot of pressure. He made a small mistake, and we helped him fix it because that is what families do. Yes, you helped him, I said. My voice was low and steady. You took out a $150,000 second mortgage. You drained your pension to pay his monthly bills. You gave him everything. But that is not why you lost the house, Mom. My father looked up from the first document. He wiped sweat from his forehead. What do you mean, Sarah? We lost the house because the payments were too high. I shook my head. I reached into the black folder one last time. I pulled out page 3 and page 4. Dad, on January 15, 2026, you and Mom signed a quitclaim deed. You gave David 50% legal ownership of this house, I said. Yes, my father said, his voice weak. David said he needed an asset in his name to show his new clients he was a serious businessman. It was just on paper. It was not just on paper, Dad, I replied. I slid the new documents across the table. Look at page 4. Look at the date. My father picked up the paper. His hands were shaking so badly that the paper made a loud rustling sound. He adjusted his glasses. He read the heavy black text. The room was completely silent except for my father's fast, heavy breathing. $50,000, my father whispered. His voice sounded like it was coming from a broken man. David, you took out a new $50,000 loan against the house. In February? My mother gasped. She grabbed her chest. What? No, David would not do that. I looked right at David. He was standing completely still, like a statue. He was sweating. He did, I explained, turning back to my father. He used his 50% ownership to secretly borrow another $50,000 from an online lender. And to do it, he forged both of your signatures on the loan documents. He committed felony fraud. He didn't use it to pay the mortgage. He didn't use it to help you. He pocketed the cash, stopped paying the bills, and let the bank foreclose on you. He bled you completely dry, and then he let you die. The truth is a very heavy thing. When it finally drops, it shatters everything underneath it. My father dropped the paper on the table. He turned his head very slowly and looked at his golden child. David, is this true? We gave you everything. We lied for you, and you stole the last $50,000 we had? For a second, David looked trapped, but a hyper-realistic villain never apologizes. They never say, I am sorry, I was wrong. When they are cornered, they attack. They blame everyone else. David's face twisted into an ugly, angry sneer. He threw his hands in the air. I needed capital, David shouted, his loud voice echoing in the empty room. You guys don't understand high-level investing. I needed that 50 grand to buy into a crypto fund. It was going to double. It is not my fault the market crashed. You stole our home, my father yelled back, his voice cracking with pure grief. You left us to be thrown out on the street. Oh, please, David snapped, pointing a finger at his own father. You gave me a cheap old house to leverage. If you guys had more money in the first place, I wouldn't have had to take out those loans. You held me back. Aunt Martha covered her mouth with her hands. She finally saw the monster she had been protecting. The golden child did not love his parents. He only loved what he could take from them. My mother started crying. It was not her usual fake, manipulative cry. It was a deep, ugly sob. She finally realized that the son she worshipped had thrown her in the garbage. She turned to me. She ran over and grabbed my arm. Her hands were cold and shaking. Sarah, she cried, tears falling down her cheeks. Sarah, please. You have the money. You own the house now. You can let us stay. We will kick David out. It will just be us. We can be a real family. Please, baby, you have to fix this. I looked down at her hands holding my arm. The little girl inside me, the one who cooked the $45 apple pie, felt a sharp pain in her chest. A small voice said, She is calling you baby. She finally wants you. But the auditor inside me knew the truth. She did not want me. She just wanted a new shield. She wanted me to pay the bills, fix the roof, and take care of her because her original plan failed. If I let her stay, I would spend the rest of my life paying for their mistakes, and the second David called her crying, she would let him right back in. I gently pulled my arm away from her hands. I am not the fixer anymore, Mom, I said softly. I am the owner. I picked up the black pen from the table. I placed it on top of the cash for keys legal agreement. I pushed it toward my father. You have 20 minutes, I said, looking at my watch. It was 2:15 p.m. If all three of you sign this paper right now, I will hand you the $10,000 in cash. You can use it to rent a small apartment. If you do not sign it, I will walk out that door, take my money with me, and call the county sheriff to forcefully remove you. There are no more games. David stared at the thick brown envelope of cash. Even now, after destroying his family, his eyes were full of greed. He needed that money. Fine, David spat. He grabbed the pen, aggressively scribbled his signature on the bottom line, and threw the pen at my father. Sign it, old man. Let her have her stupid house. I am leaving. My father looked at the pen. He looked at my mother, who was covering her face and crying on the sofa. He looked at his son, who was already reaching for the cash. Then, he looked at me. His eyes were completely broken. He slowly picked up the pen. My father's hand shook as he held the black pen. He looked like all the energy had been drained from his body. Slowly, he pressed the pen to the paper and signed his name, Robert Miller. He slid the paper to my mother. She was still crying, wiping her eyes with a tissue. She did not look at me. She signed her name with messy, jagged letters. The contract was complete. I picked up the signed legal paper. I checked the signatures carefully, just like a professional auditor checking a math problem. When I was satisfied, I placed the paper inside my black folder. I closed the folder and picked it up. Then, I pushed the thick brown envelope across the table. I pushed it directly toward my father. Before my father could even touch it, David's hand shot out. He grabbed the envelope. Half of this is mine, David said, his voice hard and greedy. My name was on the deed. I deserve a cut for my time. For the first time in my entire life, my father pushed back against the golden child. My father stood up quickly. He reached out and snatched the envelope right out of David's hands. His face was pale, but his eyes were suddenly very sharp. No, my father said, his voice shaking with anger. You took $150,000. You secretly took another $50,000. You took our home. You will not take this. David stared at our father in shock. He was not used to hearing the word no from his parents. He looked at my mother, waiting for her to defend him like she always did. But my mother just sat there, looking at the floor, crying quietly. Even the enabler could not defend him anymore. You guys are pathetic, David sneered. He fixed the collar of his wrinkled designer shirt. He looked around the dusty dining room with total disgust. I don't need your little handouts anyway. I have bigger deals lined up. Have fun living in a cheap rental. He did not say goodbye to his mother. He did not say he was sorry to his father. He turned around and walked out of the dining room. A few seconds later, we heard the heavy front door open and slam shut. Outside, the engine of his black BMW roared to life, and the tires screeched as he drove away. He left his parents standing in a house filled with boxes, with nowhere to go, completely alone. Aunt Martha finally moved. She walked over to my father and touched his shoulder. "Come on, Robert. You and Linda can stay in my guest room for a few days. Let's start moving these boxes to my car." My father nodded slowly. He looked like a broken machine. For the next hour, I stood in the corner of the living room and watched them pack. They carried boxes of clothes, old dishes, and photo albums out the front door. They moved slowly, sweating in the hot July heat. I did not help them. I just watched. Finally, only one box was left. It was the box with the large golden-framed family picture, the one where my smile looked forced, and David looked like a king. My mother picked up the picture frame. She held it tightly against her chest. She stopped at the front door and turned around to look at me. Her eyes were red and swollen. "I hope you are happy, Sarah," she said. Her voice was bitter and cold. "You finally got your revenge. You destroyed this family." She still did not understand. In her mind, she was still the victim. She still thought my boundary was an attack. Real-life toxic parents rarely have sudden moments of clarity. They wrap themselves in their own lies to protect their pride. "I did not destroy this family, Mom," I said quietly, looking directly into her eyes. "David fired the gun. You handed him the bullets. I just refused to stand in front of the target." My mother stared at me for a long time. She had nothing left to say. She turned around, walked out the door, and walked down the driveway to Aunt Martha's car. A minute later, my father walked up to the door. He held a set of silver house keys in his hand. He placed them gently on a small wooden table near the entrance. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. "I am sorry, Sarah. I should have listened to you at Thanksgiving." "I know, Dad," I whispered. "Goodbye." He walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. I heard Aunt Martha's car start, and then the sound of the tires rolling away down the street. The house was completely silent. I was standing alone in the middle of 442 Oakwood Avenue. The house was officially mine. There was no more screaming. There were no more lies. The heavy, dark cloud that had hung over me since childhood was finally gone. I walked into the living room. It was completely empty. I walked into the kitchen. The fridge was bare. I opened the back window to let the fresh summer breeze inside. The smell of dust slowly started to fade. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text message from Marcus. "Marcus, just checking in. Is the math finished?" I looked at the screen and smiled. A real, warm smile. It was the first time I had smiled in a very long time. Marcus and Mr. Vance did not share my blood, but they had stood by me when my own blood had thrown me away. They were my true family now. Loyalty, respect, and truth. That is what makes a family real. I typed my reply. "Sarah, the math is perfect. The house is empty. Thank you." I put my phone back in my pocket. I picked up the silver keys from the table. They felt cold and heavy, but they belonged to me. The scapegoat had survived the fire, and now, it was time to build a brand new life. By September 2026, the hot Chicago summer had turned into a cool, breezy autumn. I did not move into the house at 442 Oakwood Avenue. As an auditor, I know that you should never let emotions ruin a good investment. That house held too many ghosts. It held the ghost of the little girl who tried to buy her mother's love, and the ghost of the Thanksgiving dinner that broke my heart. Instead, I hired a team of workers to clean it. We pulled up the old, dusty carpets and put down fresh wooden floors. We painted the dark walls a bright, clean white. I washed away every single trace of the perfect family. In late August, I rented the house to a young, kind couple with a baby. They were so happy to have a beautiful home. The rent they pay covers my new mortgage perfectly, and it leaves me with a little extra profit every month. The math is completely balanced. I still live in my small, quiet apartment, but it does not feel lonely anymore. It feels like a fortress. 2 weeks ago, I walked down to my lobby to check my mail. Between the electric bills and the grocery store flyers, there was a plain white envelope. It did not have a return address, but I recognized the messy handwriting immediately. It was from my father. I took the envelope upstairs, sat at my kitchen table and opened it. Inside was a single piece of lined notebook paper. "Dear Sarah, I hope you are doing well. We are living in a small 2-bedroom apartment behind the highway. Aunt Martha let us stay for a month, but then she asked us to leave. She said we were too much of a burden. David has not called us. We do not know where he is. I had to take a part-time job at a hardware store just to pay for our groceries. Your mother cries every day. She still blames you for taking the house. She tells everyone at church that you tricked us. But I know the truth now, Sarah. I see it clearly, and it breaks my heart. We broke our own family. We chose a lie because it looked pretty, and we pushed away the only person who actually cared. I do not expect you to reply. I just wanted to say I am sorry. You were never a burden. I was just a blind father. Love, Dad." I sat in my quiet kitchen and stared at the letter for a very long time. I traced my finger over the words "I am sorry." A year ago, those 3 words would have made me cry with joy. I would have called him immediately. I would have driven to their cheap apartment and offered to pay their rent. But now, I just felt a quiet, dull sadness. Real life does not have magical, movie endings. My mother will never change. She will spend the rest of her life playing the victim, convincing strangers that she was a perfect parent. And my father, even though he finally sees the truth, is too weak to leave her. He will spend his final years paying for David's crimes. I folded the letter neatly and put it in a drawer. I did not write back. I did not call. Forgiveness does not mean you have to unlock the door and let people hurt you again. Sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do is forgive them in your heart, and then walk away forever. That is what setting a boundary means. This evening, my apartment smells like roasted chicken, garlic, and fresh bread. It smells like a real home. I am having a dinner party. Marcus is sitting at my small kitchen table, laughing loudly. He brought his wife, a kind woman named Elena, who is pouring apple cider into our glasses. Mr. Vance, the quiet lender who trusted me, is sitting on my sofa, smiling and eating a piece of bread. There are no silver plates, there are no fancy dresses, nobody is bragging about making millions of dollars. We are just normal people, sharing a simple, warm meal. To Sarah, Marcus says, raising his glass of cider. He looks at me with pure pride, the smartest auditor, and the strongest person I know. To Sarah, Elena and Mr. Vance repeat, clinking their glasses together. I smile, and my eyes fill with happy tears. This is the ultimate lesson I learned from the fire. DNA is just biology. Blood just means you were born in the same room. Blood does not guarantee love, and it does not guarantee respect. True family is built on loyalty. Your real family is made of the people who tell you the truth, who stand beside you when you are scared, and who never treat you like a bank account. My mother was wrong. I was never a burden. I was the strongest pillar in that house, and when they finally broke me, the whole roof collapsed on their heads. I take a sip of my sweet apple cider. I look at my chosen family laughing around my table. The little girl inside me is finally safe, and my future is completely my own. And that is exactly where my story closes, but where true justice begins. No more secret payments, one forged deed, and a silver fork I put down but never picked back up. If you have ever been the quiet scapegoat paying the price for their golden child, you understand. Share this, leave a comment, and subscribe.